Okay, good afternoon. I hope you have had lunch. And unluckily, I will be the one after lunch, so my first challenge will be to keep you awake. Okay. Well, if someone fell asleep or something, just pause me and I'll try to help waking you. Okay. Today we will have a presentation with a very long name actually. Actually it's too long to me, so maybe that's why when people were asking me yesterday what will be your presentation about, I say, okay, it's something about schedule stuff. Not because I really schedule stuff, but I really don't remember the name. But anyway, I'm Hossam. I came all the way from Abu Dhabi, 43 hours flying, to be here and share this knowledge to me. I used to be a regular speaker in this winter workshop since 2014. So I hope I will be a useful resource for you today. I'm also the director of public relations in AACEI chapter Cairo, Great Cairo section. I'm currently a project controls manager in Louis Berger, which is soon will be WSP only international. I work currently in Abu Dhabi as I told you. I always like to start my presentation with this quote. I quote it from WWW2019 AACEI, Recommended Practices of Retrospective or Forensic Analysis. It says simply, whatever you can do in schedule, it cannot be wrong. As long as you can scientifically and practically justify what you have done in schedule. So we will have an introduction. I had a problem, that's why this is the starting point for this presentation, the problem. And we'll talk about schedule construction, schedule context. And of course, once we have a problem, we must have a solution. And I will ask the typical question, project control people in our region is being asked, is this real? Can this be implemented? I will answer with a case study. Actually, we did 2 case studies for what I'm going to present now. I'm going to present only one. The issue is, from my attendance yesterday and today, I believe that some people are trying to minimize, or working on minimizing the human contribution in developing schedules, right? They managed to do this for updating the schedule using draws and stuff. Actually, I'm from the other side. People who are working on the back end, trying to dig into details. I love details. In order to support these people, the first group of people. Anyway, I love details. So what we are going to do now is talking about details. Normally, what we are doing here and what we are doing in the early age of any project is expectations, right? Whatever plan, however sophisticated your plan is or was, is just expectations, right? Do you agree? I know again that it's after lunch presentation. All of you are very close to falling asleep, so I will just try to wake you up, just try to interact. The challenge is to keep you awake and avoid to have anyone escape the room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask someone from outside to close the door so no one can escape, so I solved this challenge. The second challenge is to keep you awake. So what I'm going to do is, what we do in planning, what we are doing here in the Western Winter Workshop, or the annual meeting, it's now the conference, is doing some expectations of developing schedules, updating, and I said 2 minutes ago while I was standing here, I said that a lot of people now are working on minimizing human contribution to updating and developing a schedule. And I heard from Dr. Dan Peterson, I'm not sure I'm not pronouncing this correctly, but he said that soon, maybe soon in 10 years, that the computer will start answering the right duration, the right sequence, and. Whether we like it or not, this is happening, and this will happen. So all of these issues are expectations. and we normally have expectation like this, but when we go to reality, we have this very simple, but we cannot argue the importance of the schedule. We cannot argue this anymore. Even in our region, I came from Middle Eastern region. We cannot argue anymore the importance of the schedule. We cannot argue also that we will always have schedules, and unfortunately, we will always be late. Depending on how late, just a matter of how late you are going to be, but you will be late. Okay, from my experience, I noticed a problem. So I'm not a fancy of big surveys. The problem appeared very commonly, very obviously here in this project. This is a Metro Riyadh project, Saudi Arabia. It's $35 billion project for 7 years. So I was involved during the early preparation of planning for this project. It's nearly 65% progress completing now. I used to work for Hill International. Do you have any Hill International people here? I used to work for Hill International, and we were the PMC of a very big package of this project. The problem that appeared was that we have a consortium doing the work. We have a PMC reviewing the schedule. The problem is that we had 6 months to approve the schedule or accept the schedule, get the schedule accepted, and we had to do 8 reviews. So we wasted 6 months reviewing the schedule. Okay, so again, I'm not a fan of fancy surveys. I noticed this problem a lot in many projects, in many countries. I worked in nearly 9 countries. So I noticed this problem a lot. The schedule has a very long duration to get accepted. So I asked the first question, which is it global? Someone might say that, oh, this Middle Eastern guy is coming here and with his fancy accent and saying or introducing problems that only exist in the Middle East. So I decided to make a very simple survey. Maybe some of you were involved in this survey. And the survey was simply one question. The question was asked to planning engineer mostly, and project controls people and project managers. The question was, what is the worst, less professional, unproductive, and most time-wasting behavior or action the employer or their representative may conduct during the review of the baseline program? And we use the program a lot. It's a French spelling of program, schedule. Okay, it's a FEDIC term. Okay, FEDIC is Fédération Internationale pour Ingénieurs Conseil. It's just a template of contract. Construction project. I give some options, endless cycles of comments, absence of detailed review reference. I'm not talking about general references. I'm talking about detailed reference, project-oriented references. So we cannot say that we are reviewing the schedule based on Source Validation Protocol 7, which is the AACEI Source Validation Protocol for schedule. It's very famous. Or we are reviewing the schedule based on the PMI. Well, I didn't say PMI. I'll tell Julie that I said PMI. Okay, another standard. Okay, so I'm not talking about general references. I'm talking about specific references built in for this work. And actually, this is what I'm going to present in the late slide. The third problem is procrastinating acceptance to avoid accountability and others. I asked this question to 115 professionals, and answering what was the previous question? Is it global? Yeah, it is global, because the subject projects were 21 in the Middle East, my region, 4 in the European Union, 4 projects in the subject project, we have 4 in the European, and we have 6 projects in the US. So it's almost global. The project classifications, we have some infrastructure, airports, some ports, service buildings and mixed use, residential, museums. We have only one museum, which is the Grand Egyptian Museum, where Mr. Malalas was working. This is the countries, the presentation of the project. One in Germany. I separated Germany from the European Union because they are using a different way of managing projects. That's why I put it in a separate way. Iraq, Qatar, Morocco, USA, the USA, European Union, and Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And we have, this is the size of the project, from 10 to 50, and we have up to above $500 million value of the project. So these are the subject project, 31 projects actually. Okay? So the group session therapy results, okay, it was just one question that end the cycle of comments, 39% of the results, absence of detailed review references, 29, 23 procrastinating, and other 9%. Which means that it's all about Pareto concept, you know, you are familiar with Pareto concept? It's almost all those. So simply, the whole slide says that, the whole previous slides say that we have a problem. We have a problem. Have any of you passed through such kind of problem? Late acceptance of your baseline schedule as contractor? No one? Okay, it's good. So I didn't need to continue the presentation. Thank you very much. Have you? I believe every single, I worked for contractors for nearly 12 years before being a PMC. Mostly all of the project I work with, and this is the next survey. It's amazing tax in the next survey. I asked a simple question. Okay, this is just a presentation of the projects, and the duration of reviewing the baseline is between 4 and 6 months. Sometimes it's 10 months. I asked the question, and this is a retrospective question. I asked, in how many, we accept the baseline at the end of the day. However, in how many projects the owner, the one who's owning the project, or the one doing or having the ultimate operation of the project, regretted the acceptance of the baseline and tell the PMC, his PMC, if he opened a conversation with his PMC, not firing him, before firing him, or he fired him. Okay, how on earth did we approve or accept this schedule? Of course, on earth is the polite sentence. Okay, so the funny thing is, it's the previous projects, 14 projects, all of them, and 2 of them were in the US. All of them, the owner regretted accepting the schedule. Why? Because when we receive an extension of time claim analysis, or extension of time from the contractor, we start doing the determination as PMC, and we say, okay, the schedule, how can we use this schedule to do concurrency analysis, or do whatever we are going to do? And in one of the projects, Cairo International Airport Terminal Building 2, we had to go to something called recreated schedule. Yeah, there is in the RP 29.3, there is retrospective, observational, or model. There is something called recreated. We had to go to recreated because the original schedule was a piece of nonsense. Nonsense is the polite word. Okay? Okay. Even the updates, because you are updating the baseline, the accepted baseline. You are not updating another schedule. You are updating the baseline. So in all cases, the guy or the owner, the employer, whoever the employer was, regretted doing or accepting this schedule. So step 1, there's a problem. The problem is that the relationship is turning into kind of this, chasing each other. Okay. Now we are just a step forward in solving the problem. The first thing we need to understand, what does construction schedule context mean? What does construction schedule context mean? Have you ever heard about something like this before? Gentlemen, ladies, are you awake? Are you with me? Are you with me? Okay, thank you very much. So, in any project, we normally have this guy. This guy, okay, lack of confidence in PM, okay, this is not familiar in the US. Because if you hire a PMC, project management consultant, you normally trust him. So, but this is very common in some other markets where they hire PMC just to blame. Okay, and there was a very interesting white paper by someone called Mu'taz Hussain. He presented it in PMI Congress. PMI again, sorry. Okay, don't tell anyone that I said PMI. Okay, he presented this in the Big Five in Dubai, 2015, and he presented in the PMI Global Congress 2017, analyzing the relationship between the PMC and the owner in the Middle East. And he found out that the blaming language is the most critical problem that they face, because the employers normally blame the PMC. It's not our problem, I'm not going to waste time in this, but normally, in most of the world, change resistance, less scheduling experience, and poor engagement are there. Less scheduling experience, you are not expecting a senior manager, a senior executive of a developer to be a scheduler, right? Right? In last June, I had a meeting with the senior vice president of one of the developers in the UAE, and we spent some time, very long time, preparing a presentation to see what is the expected time for completion for this project, what are the risks associated with this project, and stuff. And it was a very nice presentation, actually, not because I'm the one who did it, because we as a team, we invested a lot of time in this presentation. And the first question, and the only question we asked before beginning the presentation is, he sat there and said, what are we buying from the contractor? Excuse me? What are we buying from the contractor? So everybody got silent. He ended it. So we didn't deliver the presentation, not because we didn't do our job in the right way, but because he was expecting something else. So this guy always has expectations. So I put an equation here: is project equals stakeholders. There is a missing equal here, which is expectations. Project stakeholder expectations. So in order to understand the expectation, we need to know the line of communication. We have either common interest relationship between the project stakeholders, continuous engagement relationship, on-demand relationship, hidden relationship, claiming relationship. Just I will give you 10 seconds to memorize the colors before I move to the next slide. It's the game, the memorizing game, memory game. Just try to memorize the colors because I'm going to move here. I trick you. Okay? We have the employer, representative, service provider, contractor, subcontractors. This is normally the context diagram, the communication lines between people inside each project. We have either common interest relationship, which is the contractor and subcontractor and the employer and their representative. We have continuous engagement, which are the representative and the contractor. And we have on demand, like this. And we have some kind of hidden relationship. I cannot see as the employer. These are hidden for the employer and for the employer representative. And we have claiming relationship, which is the contractor and the employer. Normally, what do we expect from a schedule? The senior executive for the developer is expecting simply from the schedule that you are going to answer a simple question. When are we going to be ready to start selling the units? Right? I'm building facilities, selling units. When are you going to be ready? When the project is going to complete, so that I can start launching a phase on something like this. Or I start delivering the units to those who paid before even design. So what we normally expect on the limited side of the project, the progress and cost management, forecast mitigation, resource utilization. Are these resource utilization practical, not practical? Long lead items delivery, very critical issue. Constraints and delays. Okay. And this is the typical, as I told you, this is the typical evaluation of the schedule during the project. We do this is based on the source validation protocol of the AACEI. We do vertical traceability, horizontal traceability, complete transfer, blah, blah, blah. And 14 points is the highest level of detail to check the schedule. 14 points schedule check. Have you ever heard about something like this? I believe anyone who dealt with the schedule have heard about something like this. The issue is when we are communicating with contractors that you have to follow these things. Some of these references are very subjective. So the point is, reality commences with risk management and indication game. Have any one of you attended my presentation in 2016? I was talking about airport risk modeling for airport projects. and I introduced something called indication game, which is you don't. And Mr. Nick introduced something like this in yesterday, I believe during yesterday or something. He said you never answer with a certain date or a certain budget. You answer with a range, and the indication game is just trying to add credibility and trust to this range, or to narrow this range. When we start doing this to this level and developing a real risk model, if you have a schedule which is a piece of nonsense, or it's not satisfying certain requirements related to a restricted risk management software, this will be, all the results here will be irrelevant. Forecast for strategic decision. In Cairo International Airport Terminal Building 2, they had a contract with the operator, which is Munich, for Munich Airport. It's Munich Airport. München Airport. München Airport was asking a simple question: when can we take the airport? And we have to answer as a project control team. And there is another factor, which is the World Bank, the one who funded this project. He was answering, when can I close my line of credit? When can I close your project line of credit? So this is another strategic decision. So we have to give him a forecast, a very reliable range. In order to have this range, we have to have a good schedule. Good schedule doesn't mean good schedule. I mean a schedule which satisfied certain criteria related to risk management. And of course, the fashion of these days, which is the latest fashion of these days, which are the extension of time claims evaluation. I will ask a question: how many of you has been or have been involved in some kind of forensic analysis? I believe everyone, right? So, how many of you has been involved in forensic analysis outside the US? Outside the US. Okay. There's no much different, by the way. There's no much difference. It's the same standard. We are using RP 29.3, which is the association's standard recommended practice, as a reference to our forensic analysis. So we are not doing something real different. We are doing it the same, following the same procedures. So once you start doing analysis like this, can I ask you just a common sense question? If you have a schedule which is not reliable, whoever expert you have, whatever tools you have, can you firmly assess the entitlement and the concurrency and compensability of the contractor? Yes? Yes? I'm saying that you have a schedule which is not reliable. It's not detailed enough. It's not it's not reflecting the complete scope. It's not reflecting the real sequence on site. You cannot assess fairly, or even you cannot assess in the first place whether this guy is entitled or not entitled. And some contractors actually in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and me as a contractor, I took the advantage, I'm sorry for saying this, I took the advantage of unclear schedule or insufficient schedule. I submit the very big claim, 500 pages, and I fill it with a lot of, contractors fill it with a lot of big statements, huge statements like retrospective, whatever, okay? And they throw it to the PMC, just review. Are you going to read 500 pages? Okay. But if you have a schedule, you can easily detect whether there is a problem with the analysis or not. So my point is that I need to develop a solution that satisfies the first on-site or limited site requirements and the foresight or the after project maybe requirements. I have a project, I'm into a project now in Netherlands. This project completed 2016, and there are still open claims up to now, not closed. Open extension of times and compensability and currency up to this moment. I left the company, and the guy who did it from the contractor side, was a company called Ballast Maiden. I don't know whether you are familiar with the name or not. It's just one of the biggest contractors in Netherlands. He left, I left Hill International, the PMC, and still the claim is being handed over to people to resolve this issue. Okay, and they are very, very hesitant to go to arbitration. Anyway, the problem is, in order to develop a solution for this, I and the team involved classify the steps, or identify the steps into 3 steps. We detected that there is an issue. We need to understand the schedule, type, nature, and its expected outputs. And we need to propose a practical solution to consider and make sure that this proposal is sustainable. So, the schedule acceptance is the issue. When should I accept the schedule? I'm not talking about the early project schedule. I encourage you tomorrow, there is a very good presentation about the early schedule, the pre-contract schedule. It's delivered by Mrs. Alfa Hamdi. It's calling advanced work packaging or something. It's a very nice presentation. It's talking about the schedule prior to commencement of the execution. So I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the schedule, the detailed schedule we are going to accept, and will be held accountable to this schedule. The point is, we have these type of schedules. According to my experience and my team's experience, we have strategic level requirement schedule, maybe it's 2 levels or something, deliverable level, deliverables level, master level, which is the next step, constructability level, which is the one just prior to commencement of the execution. It may be a bit to level 5 or level 6 or level 7. And the detailed one. I'm talking about this one. Some people are just jumping from the deliverable to the constructability. Some people are just jumping from the master to the detailed level. Our point is that this is the one I'm talking about, the detailed level, the one the contractor will submit for acceptance, for your acceptance as a PMC, for your acceptance as a PMC, and the one you are going to use in everything, risk modeling and. The next step, I need to understand the sensitivity of this schedule to analysis. You cannot analyze the first one, but you can analyze this. Analysis means what? Diving. Analysis means diving. Diving means what? I'm going to do a risk model. I'm going to do forensic analysis. I'm going to do something called moving resource analysis. Simply, if a contractor is saying that the false ceiling, well, the false ceiling for the whole project will go like this, and I, as a PMC, need to evaluate whether this is practical or not. I will take a vertical slice and say, okay, 5 areas are working at the same time, so it doesn't need a smart guy to say that 5 areas requires 5 crews. If I know that the contractor has 2 crews, then the schedule is not practical. Such kind of analysis cannot go without having false ceiling line activity, right? So this is a kind of detail we are talking about. We may have this in the constructability level. The constructability level was requested to be developed in order to judge whether the construction strategy is going well, or construction strategy is applicable, the logistics things are applicable, the long lead items are applicable to this level, but not into the discrete level that I can evaluate something else. So moving to the next one, we can see that the top level is not applicable for any analysis. The master level is very, very sensitive to uncertainty. So have you, how many of you have done primavera risk analysis modeling before? Okay. If you have a master level schedule and you put it into, you feed it into the system, and you just do a risk register and link the risk registers to the activities and run the analysis. Normally, the completion date probability will be less than 1%, right? Because it's the master level. It's a master level. If you have something like area 1 with 100 days of duration, if you impacted by a certain, a small, one high, mid, moderate probability and impact risk, it will just jump the whole project. Are you with me? Guys, are you following? Constructability level is sensitive also. The detailed level is sensitive to encounter delay. I used to, I have to recall a statement I heard during the panel at the beginning of this Western Mentors workshop. They said, if you miss a link or you put a delay into your critical path, it will be severely impacted if you have a detail. Let me just give it another way. If I told Mr. Daniel, yes. Mr. Daniel, I'm developing you a schedule, and I'm saying that I'm going to install this accessory next year, Friday, 3 p.m. What is the likelihood of having this done? What is the likelihood of installing this accessory? Very low, right? Very low, almost zero, right? So if you are impacting this level of detail with any delays, the whole thing will move. So this is the sensitivity check for that type of schedule. Once we start developing it, this is a very simple flowchart, right? Very simple. Very simple. Very nice. I like the colors. Who did this? Okay, anyway, this flowchart is the first step of the solution. Now, just to make you orientated, I will go back. We have here the problem, we are understanding, and then we are now resolving the issue and introducing the system I'm going to try to introduce in the coming 30 minutes. It's very simple. First, we need to agree, everybody in the project, regardless of what is this, we need to agree on the certain process, fixed process to approve the schedule. Who will review what? What kind of package you are going to submit? I cannot accept a schedule, baseline schedule without a narrative. I cannot accept the baseline schedule. I'm talking about the contractor submitter schedule. I'm not talking about the early age schedule. I'm talking about the contractor submitter schedule. Okay? So, who will do the technical review if you have a supervision consultant or something called the technical advisor? What is the role of the PMC? What is the role of the employer? Just do something related to the project so everybody understands what are the steps to have this schedule accepted. Okay? The next step is the more important. How am I going to evaluate the schedule? And at this point, you need to have all the stakeholders buy in the method so that that system can be effective. Normally, this is starting from here. This is our proposal of the solution. This is our system we propose. We said, okay, we have mandatory requirement for each schedule that I cannot, as PMC or I cannot, as an employer, accept this schedule without having these requirements. We have something called related to the completeness of the schedule, answering the question whether this schedule is complete or not complete. And some requirements related to the quality of the schedule. Okay? Requirement, just be specific. I had, just for the scientific credibility, I have to refer to AACEI standards and some other standards. Okay? We come up with this very simple table that represents the term. And this is the table we came up. What is this? Okay. We are not going to evaluate you in a very general way. We are not going to say, we have mandatory requirements, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4. We are going to have completeness requirements, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you have some quality requirements, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 4, blah, 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 blah. You are going to have exact criteria, line of criteria that represent the mandatory, the completeness, and the quality. And these are the lines here. These criteria are related to the criteria we invented, we came up with. It's, again, there is a reference to this. We had go or no go, 15 criteria. 15 criteria, go or no go. We classified them into 2 categories. Must be included, which is a common sense that one of them, it's an example, covers the entire contract scope. So if you are opening the schedule and you find out that there is a missing part of the contract which is not there in the schedule, you can't proceed because the schedule is not complete. Must not be included. This is some of them were technical. For example, I believe most of you, or maybe all of you, worked in Primavera P6 before, right? Or familiar with Primavera P6. You know what are mandatory constraints? In mandatory start, mandatory finish. You know what they do? They override the logic. Mandatory start, mandatory finish, they are overwriting the logic. So if you have a baseline, there are some certain cases that where mandatory start or finish are required or can be used. But for a baseline, if you find out that there is a mandatory start or mandatory finish, we consider this as no-go decision. So we have 15, I remember, 6 must be included, 6 criteria that must be included, and 9 criteria must not be included. If you see one of these 9 in the schedule will be returned. And must be included. If one of these 6 are not included, there is a problem. We can stop. And by the way, we didn't do this on a closed room in a hotel away from the contractor. That's why I said 5 minutes ago, we have, you heard me? We have to have the contractor involved. We have to have the contractor involved. Actually, we didn't involve only the contractor, and I will show you the case. We involved the contractor, the employer, the owner, and in another project, we involved the authorities who will do something called adoption of the project. If you are building a facility for New York City municipality, for example, after you finish, who's going to take it over? Municipality. In our law, in our definition in the Middle East, we call it adoption. They will come and take over the building. So your relation with the building is over. Okay? So we involve the operators, we involve the end users, the one who's going to take over the facility whenever we finish. So when it comes to the next step, we identified altogether in workshop 65 criteria related to baseline, update, or can be applicable for baseline or update. And for the 65 criteria, we check whether this criteria is there, and we evaluate the quality of this criteria. Have you got the picture before I go to the example? The common step, and then we have the submission. Again, this is the 65 criteria, okay? And let's just take one criteria. One criteria. The criteria is total float and critical path. It's number 27. By the way, if you are interested and you want the sheet, the Excel sheet, it's available. I can send it to you. Just you need to drop me an email. I will show a slide with my contacts. Drop me an email and I will send you back the native file of the system and the presentation itself. It's open and you can share it by the way. Criteria number 27 is total float and critical path. We have to satisfy some criteria related to total float and critical path, because this is very essential not only to evaluate and forecast for the project, it's also essential in risk management and later in forensic analysis. The whole forensic analysis recommended practice is based on examining the critical path. Am I right? We are examining the critical path. If you don't have a reliable critical path that can be elaborated, so you cannot do the next step. So it's a score element. Our reference for this score element, we did this for every single score per the 15-point schedule check. This is the AACEI standards. Just focus. I know it's lunchtime, but I believe we did some digestion, right? Okay, so the next thing, is this a core required component? We classify the component into two things. Core required component, which means this is a general requirement or related to something. What are something? This is first a general requirement. We call the general requirement core requirement components, CRC, or conditional schedule component. In the conditional schedule component, we classify it into 3 categories, actually 4. One of them is criteria, RRC, criteria related to resources. Following, so this guy is assigning labor resources on this way, on the agreed way. And ERC, some things related to earned value management system. In order to use earned value by to assess the progress in Primavera, because it's cost-driven software. If you are using, are you familiar with Primavera? I'm going to just, I'm in love with Primavera, by the way. That's what kept me to 36 without getting married. I'm in love with Primavera. So it's in Primavera, if you are using something called performance percentage complete. You are familiar with what I'm saying? The performance percentage, the algorithm of performance percentage complete is earned value cost
divided by at completion total cost, right? If you are not assigning money to the project, of the program, then the performance percentage complete will always read 0, right? So if we are planning to use, and actually this was, I always insist out of my directions to use this as the progress evaluation percentage for some reasons, because I use something called relative weights and stuff, but this is not the point. The point is, if you are having, we have here out of the 65, I don't remember how many, but we have some of these 65 are related to earned value. And we have something KRC, which are related to risk management. So we have, I remember, 22 criteria related to risk management. If you are going to use this project or this program further to do risk modeling or something, you have to go for, or to evaluate the KRC. And some other options. We had some enhancements criteria, we call them option. So, first, the score, the reference, what kind of category this score element falls. The second thing, the evaluation. We evaluate in 2 levels. Whether this criteria is there or not. If you are doing, for example, earned value. If he didn't load cost on the project, on the schedule, it doesn't exist. So we evaluate first. If it's 0, 1, 0, it doesn't exist. 1, it does exist. And we go to the level, and this is what we are elaborating now. Criteria quality assessment. We did a scale from 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 100. We did a scale to evaluate criteria. And then we evaluate the 65 criteria. These criteria, or this scoring we are doing for the program, is going to 2 dashboards. One dashboard defining the completeness of the project on a scale of 100%, and the other one is evaluating the quality of this project on a scale of 100%. So, this is the general description of the system. Okay. How did we, or elaborating, this is the next step, I'm going to just return a bit. We are here now. So, we are moving. Moving. The last thing is where all the arrows goes to, ensure the sustainability. This system was implemented in 2 projects. This system was implemented in 2 projects. 2 different countries, by the way. We didn't use the same 65 criteria for both projects. So the sustainability we are doing now is to give some flexibility to the criteria. So when we give this system to someone and say, okay, go and implement the system, we give them some flexibility to certain criteria. There are criteria like existence of WBS. We cannot negotiate this, right? Existence of project WBS. We cannot negotiate whether there will be a WBS or there not. Maybe anyone here used B3 before? B3, Primavera P3.
Yes.
We have never used WBS in Primavera P3. We have never used WBS because it was very complicated. We used to use codes. I'm a bit old, so I used Primavera P3. So we've never used WBS in Primavera, but in Primavera P6, of course, WBS is amendative. Okay? Something funny? Okay, good. Okay, I thought this picture is a kind of funny thing or something. Okay, anyway, is this real? Have we done this? Yeah, I'm going to introduce now a project. Is this real? Yeah. This is one of the most beautiful spots in the world. It's Tangier, Morocco. We were doing this project. This was our project. Tangier Med 2. It's a terminal container facility owned. I have the privilege, or I got the permission to communicate the name of the owner and the contractor from them. So this was owned by APMT Terminal, part of Mercy Group. You heard about this? It's an operator port operator. It's a Danish company, but their headquarters is in The Hague, Netherlands. We were the PMC when I was working with Hill International, and the contractor was from Belgium, Veremin Group. It's a Belgian contractor, and most of the subcontractors were local subcontractors, and the designer was AACEI, UK offices, and the STC the ship-to-shore cranes were supplied by a Chinese company. I don't remember. Okay, so at the early stage of the project where we involved, we sat with the contractor, with the owner, and some of the operator team of the owner, and we said, okay, we need a schedule in order to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why the schedule was very essential here? Because they were doing a contract to purchase these STS. This STS will arrive on site at a certain date. There is no place to store the STS. It is recommended by the manufacturer that these items cannot be stored. They have to come and get installed. So once the ship starts moving, it's done. We have to have a fixed date where this items is going to be installed. And consequently, all the utilities connected to this item, SCADA system, ICT system, networks, sewer utilities, whatever connected to these items need to be ready just to plug and play. And the owner is going to start having his profit once these items are operational, because he's investing something like 400 million euros. Don't know how much in dollars? Something like 600 something. Okay, $600 million investing in developing a fully automated terminal container facility. Fully automated means minimal human contribution, and he's pushing all this money, spending all this money in order to have this port operational so that he can start having his revenue. So it's essential to have a good schedule, right? So we sit with Veremin Group as international, with a PMT, and with a representative Mercer Group, the operation, and we created something called the context diagram. So that's how we are going to communicate. And we have someone from the authority. This is the inquiry. This is how we are going to communicate, and everything here had a real meaning, but it's a waste of time just to say what does the dotted line means and what does the navy blue means or something. But anyway, this was the project context diagram, and we came up with the 65 criteria, and we spent something like 3 months with the planning team of the Veremin Group to develop the criteria and start inserting things and do a demo and elaborating the system in order to have their schedule fairly evaluated. And they did the submission, the first submission, and we came up with reality. This is the Completeness Index. So they got 59% Completeness Index. They were required here in, we put 85% achievement in order to accept this schedule. And we were very aggressive in the detailing things. So we had to have level 12 detailing. It's not because we are giving them hard times, because we need exactly in certain areas, in certain phases, in certain WBS elements of the project to know if we are going to have a delay, to call the ship and say, okay, stand, just do something in the middle of the sea, just go and do some snorkeling or diving until we are ready to receive you. So this is the Completeness Index, and this was the Quality Index. We did this again for the current project I'm working with, but for not the current project, not the tunnel project, another project. We did this. We are now developing the criteria, and the good thing is, the good news I had before coming here, that I had a chat with one of Oracle guys, and she said, okay, we can start discussing implementing or integrating this into Primavera P6 as an internal evaluation tool. So maybe when I come back, we will have some kind of discussion. But in Primavera Risk Analysis, we have this tool. Not exactly the same evaluation. We have some, if you go to Tools, Schedule Evaluation, Report, you can generate a report under the 14 points, by the way. It's following the 14 points. If you are inserting or importing a schedule to Primavera Risk Analysis, Monte Carlo things, you can have an evaluation report of the 14 points. But here we are not talking about 14 points. We are talking about maybe 65, maybe we will come up, we will raise them up to 85. We are talking about the concept of detailing the reference and agreeing on a reference with the contractor so that I can not only give him that it's C plus or C or B, you know these characters, what does these characters stands for? C is resubmitted or B accepted as knowledge. I can give him a simple report saying these are the area of improvement you need to do in order to have this. And I can come, I'm thinking of adding some another categorization system related to extension of time analysis. So what do I need in order to have a schedule that can be used for extension of time analysis? Okay? Again, the system, I hope things are getting better. You're not starting to throw eggs? Nothing? Okay. So, you are most welcome to have this system. These are my contacts, all my contacts. You are most welcome to have this system and the presentation. I had the honor and the pleasure to deliver this presentation as a webinar in San Francisco region, right? And I had the pleasure and honor to present it in the last Big Five. And the system, the native file, the Excel file are available. I know that most of you are not that familiar with AACES, AACES database software. I have another version of the system with AACES, but I'm not going to communicate the AACES because you have to know the flow charts and stuff. It's something related to myself. So I'm going to communicate the simple criteria, and I'm going to ask you for something. If you have any constructive criticism to the criteria or any revisions, don't hesitate to communicate with me. Just say, okay, these criteria are not adequate. We can replace them with 1, 2, 3, 4. These criteria which are related to the risks are not adequate. You can add this. The system is very flexible, and I'm very happy to receive comments from such professional community like the Western Winter Workshop. Thank you very much. I wish I had been a useful resource during the past 1 hour minus 8 minutes. And I'm open for any questions if you have any.
I have a question. You said you were reviewing schedule for 3 months, right? One of those examples.
Not reviewing the schedule for 3 months. We agreed on the criteria in 3 months, but we reviewed the schedule in 3 weeks. Less than 3 weeks. Yeah. And they got the B. They got the B which is approved with some comments, and the comments were related to the system, and they submitted, and they got the comments after, I believe, 18 days or 17 days, something like this.
So in the Middle East, it's common to have a PMC contractor, but who prepares the schedule? Does the PMC prepare the schedule, or does the contractor prepare?
Very good question. Up to the constructability, I will return back. I don't know why this is not working. I'm going to return back just risk management. Okay. So I'm going to return back just to answer this question. I'm going to return back. I'm almost done. You see, this is the kind of schedule we are having. Up to here, the PMC is doing the schedule. Up to because this is pre-construction schedule. Up to here, I've done for the last project, I've done the constructability level schedule. Okay, but the detail level is completely the contractor because he's going to be accounted for, even if the contract is APC, design, engineering, procurement, construction.
Okay, so for your go or no goes, you made mention that when towards sort of finish, absolutely no go. We understand that because that artificial creates a critical pattern.
Yeah.
Now, we give a specific here. What if a contractor per se said, okay, for a finishing, we have to finish on or after? And
Okay, but this is not a mandatory constraint. This is just a constraint that can be acceptable within a range. So one of the criteria is the existence of constraints. If you go to the 14 point, I believe as I remember, point number 5 or 6. Point number 5 or 6 in the 14 point saying that you are allowed to use constraint with a percentage of plus minus 5%, I believe. So if you are going to anything rather than mandatory and start and finish, you can go to the you will be moved from the mandatory requirement to the other criteria. So
you analyze you use like re-simulation to analyze logistics requirements. That seems to be
yeah. In the constructability you mean, or in the
right at the bottom.
this one?
Yeah, logistics requirements.
A logistics requirement. Well, in the last project, because it's very user friendly in the logistics, because it's only one route and stuff, we did this. But for complicated project, this goes to this. The logistic things if I'm a PMC and I'm preparing some guidelines for logistics, I cannot oblige the contractor to use a certain logistics patterns or logistic requirements, because if I did this, I may or might have a fire back that you asked me to do this, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you have a complicated project, in my opinion, in my view, you can just move this from B to A.
So the
I will come to
question is in this schedule, do you require the cost to be inside the schedule?
I require the cost. Yeah.
Okay.
In all my projects I was involved in, even as a contractor, I always put the cost. I put the cost not to present, just differentiate between two things: cash flow, cash in and cash out, and the cost in lump sum contract. If you are using lump sum contract, you have to assign a kind of weight to the project, and you have to assign these costs in accordance with this weight. So if you have concrete with 1 million, for example, and you are breaking down the concrete into 5 WBS elements and 1,000 activities, they must sum to 100 as the PQ item, right? 1 million as the PQ item. But the internal distribution is something we can negotiate. So this creates not cash flow, it creates something called progress weight distribution. Okay?
So this is all like preliminary baseline schedule, right? Once you have all this, your monthly updates, the progress of.
Okay, but you have to accept that you can
So
update this, you can update this, you can update, but you have to accept that these are very indicative.
Yeah.
When you come to real update, you can go.
Okay. So once the owner buy this, your monthly updates. So you
and he's going to buy. Yeah. I'm sorry for interruption.
So once the owner buy this, and then the monthly progress, the scorecard can go down.
Yeah.
Below you set about at 85.
85 is the
depending
project
upon-
specific.
So when it go down, you adjust your criteria based
We
on-
go back. I don't adjust my criteria by myself. We sit back and say that these are the shortfalls. Just please look. And in the criteria, some criteria are only for updates. Some criteria are, for example, the percentage complete time. It's only for updates.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Oh,
Is this going up on YouTube?
huh?
Is this going to go on YouTube?
Okay.
The real question is, have you ever successfully implemented a rolling wage concept? And do you recommend it?
No, unfortunately, no. Thank you very much, guys. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I hope I did something. I have my business card if you are interested, and I already showed the presentation. I have some kind of fix, just like to stop the recording.